Okay, so welcome everyone. It's Martin Perhiniak from Yes, I'm a Designer. And this is my first live session, so sorry if it's a little bit slow or boring. I'm trying to show you a few useful techniques. Some of these you might have seen before in my videos. And I will try to also keep an eye on the chat, so I have this here on the side. And I will try to respond as much as possible, but at the same time also concentrate on the techniques I want to show you today. That's the main aim of this live session. But I will have parts when I stop concentrating and looking at my work, and I will ask you questions and then I look at the chat. So feel free to comment as much as you want. I will try to go back and reply depending on how many of you are actually actively chatting, and I can see there's a lot of you already joining in. So that's really cool. No one is here to moderate the chat, so sorry if there's anything coming up. Please try to be polite and to each other as well and to me. So don't say anything that you wouldn't normally say. So I would like to introduce a bit what we are going to do today. And this is going to be obviously mainly shared screen. So I'm going to switch to my screen now as well. And you should be able to see what I'm going to do. So this example is something I used in my courses before, and I really like the way I can explain a lot of features with this simple example. So you can see on the left side a drawing that I've done on paper, I think. I can't even remember, it was a couple of years ago actually when I've done this. And then on the right we have the vectorized version. Now, a lot of you probably joined me on or watched me one of an earlier recordings of an actual live seminar or presentation, and this I think wasn't included in that, so you probably haven't seen this, only if you've joined me in one of my courses. So what I would like to do is to guide you through this process as I vectorize this and trace over manually of this drawing. But before I start on this, I show you a very simple example as well. And this is another favorite example of mine where I show how to work with shapes and simple techniques. So if you have a simple shape like this umbrella, that is something you can very quickly recreate by using shapes instead of trying to use the pen tool. Although the pen tool is great and it can be used for so many different things, whenever you can, try using shapes. So if I draw, for example, a circle, and by the way, I'm using the keyboard shortcuts all the time, so I'm going to try to tell you whenever I use one. Like now I'm holding down the space bar, so that's a big problem when you start drawing a circle. It's already something a lot of people have problems with, because you never know exactly where to start. So there's two techniques. Either if you want to draw a circle, try to get roughly in the middle of a shape, and then if you hold down the Alt key, you can start drawing out. I can see Sam, you are asking to reply. Yes, I'm recording this. So yeah, this is all recorded, so it's going to be available later on as well. But if you want, you can ask questions in this live session. I'm going to try to pay attention to your comments whenever I stop for a bit between techniques explained. So holding down the Alt or Option key, you can draw shapes outwards from their center point. That's already useful, and you can see I almost got it right, having it set to the center point. But an even better technique is to start drawing wherever you want your shape, but then before letting go, hold down the space bar. So space bar can help you to move, and whenever you let go the space bar but still holding down the mouse, you can then move the shape around freely. And you can see how nicely I can align this to the shape that I need. So I have that outline up there, and by pressing the question mark or forward slash on the keyboard, I can very quickly remove the fill color. So now that I have my outline, which I can, by the way, set to maybe red, just so we can see it better, that's going to be a shape that I'm going to use to recreate this. So the next step is to draw another circle. And once again, look at this. If I start drawing and I realize that it's not close enough, I just hold down the space bar, move it closer, and constantly align by pressing and letting go the space bar. When I'm ready, I let go. And then comes the next trick. Holding down, switching to the selection tool. By the way, that's also something I always do and forget mentioning, but I press a V on the keyboard, and that way I can move the shape. And by the way, before I go any further, is the sound quality good? Is the video quality good? Because as I said, this is the first time that I'm doing live stream, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on. I hope it's enjoyable, and I have a quite good microphone, so it should be good. Sounds good, looks good, brilliant. Thank you very much. So coming back to here, once I selected the selection tool, that's a V on the keyboard by default, then you can start duplicating by holding down the Alt key again, Alt or Option, and then click and drag your shape. Now, if you also hold down the Shift key, then you can make sure that the shape that you're moving or duplicating in this case is going to move only in one direction, either to the horizontal direction or vertical or diagonal. You can also do 45-degree diagonal angles. So it's basically constraining or restricting the movement. So moving it to the side like something like that. When I let go, that creates the duplicate, and now I have two of them. But if I have a repeated pattern of the same sort of shape, instead of again duplicating, I can use another shortcut, which is Command or Control D. D as duplicate, so it's easy to remember it, and that just repeats your last transformation. In this case, it was a duplication. So again, I do Control Command D, and there you go. I repeated the last change that I did. So just to show you this is under the Object menu, and it's a brilliant option. It's the Transform Again. Now I'm going to try something again. It's something I use always in my tutorials, and I want to test whether this works in the live stream. If I zoom into this part here, I want to see whether this actually works. So let me just zoom back again. So Object, Transform Again. Does this actually zoom in the live stream? That's the question. Once you can see what I've done, just let me know in the chat. So whether it worked, the zoom option. Works. Brilliant. Thank you so much. There is obviously a little lag between the stream and how I do it. So there's, as I can see, around 10 seconds difference. So if I respond a little bit later, that's because of that difference in time. So it's brilliant that the zoom works. I'm not going to zoom much because I have it set to a full HD resolution. So as long as you are watching it on a bigger screen and not on a small phone, you should be able to see what I'm doing. But still, sometimes I might zoom in when I want to show something tiny or something difficult to see. So the Object Transform Again is the feature that I used. And it can be used for so many different things. So if I create a shape, let's say like this rectangle, and then I increase the size of it. So let's say I just drag it this way, and then I press Command D. You can see I can increase the size with the same proportion every time. Now, if I then try, let's say, having a shape and then duplicate it, while holding down the Alt key, you can duplicate and duplicate and create a copy of the same shape. And then if I use the Control D, let me just do this again. So it's a little bit confusing. So holding down Alt, click and drag, duplicate. And then if I use the Control D, you can see it's going to duplicate that. But it gets even more interesting once you start using other techniques instead of just simply duplicating something. Let's say you start rotating a shape. The Rotate tool is here on the toolbar. R is the shortcut. So with that, if I click anywhere on my artboard and I start click and dragging this shape, if I hold down the Alt key, I can create a duplicate while rotating. And guess what? If I now use the Control D or Command D, it's going to keep rotating my shape and repeat the rotation that I've done before. How cool is that? So you can create amazing repeated patterns even in a concentric alignment or arrangement. And of course, it has so many different ways of using this. Now, as I said, and that's like applies to everything. When I show you a simple technique like the Control D, it's not limited to the way I'm using it. So here I used it in a horizontal line. Now I show it to you combined with the rotation tool or the rotate tool, and I used it in a concentric way. But always remember that the techniques I show you can be combined with anything, any of the other tools in Illustrator. So it's really up to your creativity and the time you spend exploring these and playing around with these. And you will probably be able to come up with much more fun and more useful techniques as well, specific to what you need. Cool. So let's move ahead. We have our 5 circles or ellipses, and I'm going to select them all. And then what I will do is to switch to the Shape Builder tool. Now, this is my favorite tool, so allow me a zoom on this. So that's the Shape Builder right there. Shift M is the shortcut, but you can customize the shortcut of any tool in Illustrator. I can show you that quickly how to do that. So if I select this, I will be able to work with it. But by the way, if you go to Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, that is where you can find the tools. And for each tool, you can customize the shortcut. So if something like the Shape Builder is my favorite tool, I can decide to change it to, let's say, S. Sorry, I'm using the wrong one. That's the one. Let's say S. Now it's conflicting with the Scale tool, but to be honest, I never use the Scale tool in Illustrator or hardly ever touch that tool because I use different ways of scaling objects. So if I don't use that shortcut, why have it set to such a cool key like the S? So I'd rather use that with the Shape Builder. So I'm going to click OK, and then I will save this as a set. And everything that you customize needs to be saved as a keyboard shortcut set. But now you can see the Shape Builder tool is set to S, so it's much faster to select it in the future. So when I have the object selected, and this is important, if you don't have anything selected, you won't be able to use the Shape Builder tool. It even gives you this cursor that tells you that, sorry mate, you can't use this right now because you don't have anything selected. So you have to select the shapes that you want to make changes to, and then I press S, I'll customize shortcut. Now I can start combining things. I like to actually start removing things or subtracting things first with this tool, and that's just simply by holding down the Alt key. And notice how the cursor will change when I hold down Alt or Option. We get the minus, which is what we need. So Alt, click and drag, I can draw over and remove all of these quite quickly and easily, and we end up having just the remaining part that we needed in this case. But let me go back one step and show you another way of using this tool. If I combine the Alt key or Option key with the Shift key together, I can also click and drag over sections or areas. So it's like a marquee selection, which will remove everything that falls under this selection. So that's Alt Shift together used with the Shape Builder tool. Cool. Yeah, I can see Faris is saying that it's probably the Pathfinder that you use, the minus front and intersect tools. They are great, and you can find them in the window Pathfinder panel. So we have the shape modes here, we have the Pathfinder's options, and you actually have even more options here. If you go into Pathfinder options, you can find additional settings. So this is a brilliant feature as well. And sometimes when I have like really complex examples, I might still use that. But the Shape Builder I found much more intuitive and faster. So I actually, I think they introduced this tool in CS4. Since then, I've been using this most of the time. So now that I have my shape, I'm going to do another trick with another shortcut. It's Shift X. Shift X can swap your stroke and fill colors or the attributes. And so yeah, I can just see some of you are joining right now. We are going to finish this little drawing here. I'm tracing over a pixel image and I'm trying to recreate it with vector shapes, but then I'm going to move on to drawing a more complex character illustration, and if we have time I might even go into shading it. Here on the right you just see a flat version of it, but I'm going to try to add shading to it as well. So if you're interested and to see this live and to be able to ask questions, just stay with me, and feel free to use the chat. You should play the Bezier game. That's a brilliant idea from Nero. I can do that. We can do that at the end. Just remind me. I love that game, by the way. I haven't played it. I don't think I actually went through the whole game, but it's such a cool way of practicing the pen tool. So cool tip there. Just remind me to get back to that at the end. So let me just come back to our lovely umbrella and the Shift X that I showed you. So Shift X is to swap between fill and stroke attributes. So that's just essentially whatever you have on the stroke will become fill and vice versa. So that's great. We have now our fill ready, but how I do the actual handle is very different to the way I've done the actual canvas or the top bit of this umbrella. So what I normally do is look at the shape that I need to recreate and try to come up with the easiest possible technique. So I could go through and use the pen tool and draw it like that, which obviously would take long and I would have to refine it and so on and so forth. So that's a bit too slow. Because we are dealing with a slightly easier shape in this case, I wouldn't go to the pen tool. And once again, I can see that this is actually almost like a rounded rectangle or a section of a rounded rectangle. So that might be actually a better way to approach it. So if I switch to, by the way, if I don't respond to an answer, don't worry, I will get back to them. I will always stop for a bit and reply to questions whenever I get to like a natural stop. So the rounded rectangle tool is cool because with that, what you can do is draw a rectangle, but while you are drawing it, you can use the arrows on the keyboard, and this is the right and left arrows. So while drawing, just moving it to the side with the space bar. Remember, I showed you this already today in this video. Holding down the space bar, you can move shapes around while you are drawing it. And if you are using the rounded rectangle tool, you can use the left and right arrows to quickly switch between completely rounded corners or sharp corners. And if you use the up and down arrow, just pressing that or press and holding it, you can adjust, again, still whilst drawing a shape, how much you want the radius to be. So you can increase or decrease the radius of your shape. Now I'm going to use the full roundness in this case. And I'm using the spacebar again to align it. And notice what I'm trying to do here is to have the shape aligned to the center line of the handle. So I was just using the spacebar to align it like that. And when I'm ready, I let go. Now, the reason I did that on the center line, because if I now go up onto the stroke option and start increasing that, you will see that I can very quickly get to the same type of shape. And of course, all I will have to do is to remove the unnecessary parts. So let me just switch the color on this to something else so we can see it better. And that is probably not standing out enough. Maybe use... well, green is not good. Try to avoid using green on red because for some people that might be difficult to see. That's a general tip for graphic design. So green on red or red on green is probably the most common color blindness problem. And in Photoshop, actually, there is a way to simulate color blindness. Let me just switch quickly to show it to you. It's quite cool. And if you want to make sure that your design is something that people will be able to see, I mean, make sure that colorblind people can see it well as well, then you should try this out. So I have, let's say, a red background. Red is, by the way, a very useful color because it's a very strong and quite aggressive color, but it really helps to get attention, and it's an engaging color to work with. Red, black, and white, like the combination of these three colors, are highly effective, and you would see it used in advertisement and a lot of branding, like even YouTube itself is using red as its main color, and Google. So it works. This definitely works. But especially because of red being such a commonly used color in design, you have to be very, very careful of how you use other colors on top of it. And sorry if I'm going on a tangent here, but this is something I thought I want to mention, because not many people know about this, that you can actually test how it works for colorblind people. So you have your two colors, and then if you want to check how this would work for color blindness, all you have to do, and this is, by the way, in Photoshop, I just switched to Photoshop, you go to the view menu, and then you can go into the proof setup, and under that you will find color blindness protanopia, and I can't pronounce the other one, it's deuteranopia or something like that. I can't ever pronounce that. So if I choose the first one, we get a preview of how colorblind people will see these two colors on top of each other. And this is not actually what they see, but this is giving you a simulation of the contrast that they will see. And if the two shapes, or two colors in this case, are too close, that means that they will have trouble seeing the difference between these two elements. So if I switch to the other one, let's just test the other one. So this was one, and the other one is actually getting closer. So for those type of color blindness, people with this type of color blindness might find it even more hard to see these two colors, but this is still a healthy amount of contrast. But now let's see what happens if I start changing my color, and this is the key. When you start desaturating your colors, so I start to fall in somewhere in the middle, so the saturation drops down to around 50% or even below that for both of these colors. So let me just change this also and reduce its saturation. That's when it starts to be very difficult to see for colorblind people. So I can switch back to the other one as well. And we can probably stay to the second option, because that's the more difficult one to see. So if I use these two colors on top of each other, and maybe it's text on a background, it might be very difficult to see for that person who is looking at it. And of course, if I start changing the color, I might even be able to get to something that's even more difficult to see. So even though it's green on red, now it's almost impossible to see. And just to prove that to you, if I go back and remove the color blindness option by removing proof colors, you can see it's actually two different colors. But even for someone without color blindness, it is not providing enough contrast anyway. So I wouldn't use these two colors normally, but now we know that if we have to work and make sure, we work for a campaign, we have to make sure that it is accessible for everyone. Make sure that you check the color blindness for it. So that was a complete tangent. I'm going to show you things like this whenever I do live streams, and let me know if you don't like that, or let me know if you're not interested in theory in design. I think it's useful. So instead of just focusing on techniques, it's always good to learn a little bit about theory and something you can apply to whatever you do in these creative applications. So coming back to the shape that we created, I'm just going to pick a color that is definitely different to what we have behind it. So just you can see what I'm doing. Cool. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot for your vote for tangents. Cool. So the shape that we created is brilliant, but we need to be able to subtract from this. So I only need one side of it. So I just show you that we need that shape what we have in the background. So I need to cut off from this. And this is where it is important to learn another very, very important technique, and that is expand. Now, expand is one of those features that you find it, by the way, under the object menu. But this is one of those features that a lot of Illustrator users are scared of or not really sure when to use it. Essentially, what expand can do is to simplify shapes. And even if it's just a simple stroke, so this shape doesn't have any special attributes on it, no effects, nothing like multiple strokes or multiple fills, it's just a simple stroke. But even when you use expand on a simple stroke, you can use it to convert your stroke into a fill. So why do we need that? You will see it in a second. But if I use expand, you see it asks me what I want to do. I can just choose it to expand both fill and stroke attributes. And when I click OK, you will see that now we have a filled shape. So I created essentially like a chain link shape. And or you can think of it like a ring, an elongated ring. But now it's not a stroke anymore, so I don't have the stroke attributes. You can see no stroke color and no stroke size. This is very important. Now this is a filled shape. And why is that important? Because from a filled shape, I can very easily subtract by using the eraser tool, for example. Shift-E is the shortcut for that. And with this, you can, whatever is selected, you can delete from it. Or you can hold down the Alt key and delete with a selection. And see how quickly I can get to the shape we needed. So holding down Alt with the eraser tool, you subtract bigger blocks or chunks of your current selection. So this, using the eraser tool, combined with the expand technique, can be extremely useful. Again, I'm hoping this is something you will try out yourself and try to use this for different things. So I'm showing you a very simple example here, but this can be applied to so many different techniques. It's really just up to you how you are using this technique. So coming back to what we have here, now we have these two shapes ready, and I can use the Command or Control square brackets to move this currently selected shape back and forth. And by the way, just another reminder about the eraser tool. If I want to erase from everything on my artboard, I make sure I don't have anything selected. The shape can be anything. It can be an ellipse as well. So it doesn't matter how you use it. All right, I'm going to just show you this quickly as I just started explaining. So if you don't have anything selected, then the eraser tool will erase from all your shapes, as you can see. But if you want to erase from a specific shape, like the red shape in this case, I can select that, and then if I use the eraser tool, notice that it won't actually affect the deselected shapes or the shapes that are currently not selected. So it automatically isolates the eraser to work with the current selection. That's very, very important. Remember that as well. All right, so we have this quickly recreated, and just to run through again the whole thing, I'm going to do this much faster. So for those who just joined recently, let me show this again very quickly how I done it. And if you want, this whole video is going to be available, the recorded version on my channel. So whoever is asking how I done something can always watch it back. But I just want to show you how fast this can work if you know what you are doing. And that's the whole point of my channel. And yes, I'm a designer, is all about this, trying to teach you to work effectively, to be able to create without boundaries. So to be able to do something that you have an idea and you can immediately create it without struggling. So I'm trying to get you to that point, because it took me more than 10 years to really master these tools. And even now I'm coming up with new techniques and realizing that, oh, I haven't used this before, let's just test it out. But I'm constantly trying to improve myself, and I'm trying to share the best ways of doing things. So let's see how fast I am. You can even time me. So if I want to recreate this, I'm going to do exactly the same techniques as before. I'm not going to really explain what I'm doing, but you should be able to watch the recorded version of that. So let's see, starting in 3, 2, 1. All right, so we have our shape. 1, Shift X. Let's draw the next one. And then duplicate, Alt, click and drag, Command D or Control D, select all, Shape Builder tool, holding down Alt and Shift, subtract, Shift X for this shape here. That's good. Let's do the rectangle, rounded rectangle tool. I draw that one, align it to center, Shift X to have the stroke, Shift click on the arrows to quickly increase the amount. That's something I haven't mentioned before. I might come back to that. Expand, then eraser tool, having the current selection, I'm not affecting what's in the background, changing the color to whatever we need, let's say blue, send it to the back and done. So that was probably around a minute, maybe less. You can tell me if you actually timed me, how long that took. But yeah, that was something I showed here, which I forgot to mention before, that when you draw a shape and let's say it has a stroke attribute and it's set to 1 point, if you want to quickly increase it, instead of clicking on this one by one, hold down the Shift key and you can increase it by 10-point increments. So that's extremely useful, and that actually applies to most of the arrows on the interface. So if you hold down Shift key, it's much faster to increase the stroke attribute there. Cool. All right. So I wanted to actually focus on a more complex illustration. Yes, the shape builder behaves the same way in CS6. The only difference, yes, Diego is asking a very, very good question. The only difference in CS6 about the shape builder is that you can only use it on straight lines. So when you have a few shapes placed down, let me just add a couple of shapes here. So if I have these selected and use the shape builder, in the new version I can draw freely. While in CS6 you would only be able to draw along a straight line. Unfortunately, this free drawing mode of the shape builder will only work in CC. So sorry about that, but still CS6 has almost everything that shape builder offers in the Creative Cloud version. Cool. Now let me have a look at your comments and let me rest a bit, just explaining a few things. I'm going to continue with this drawing of the robot afterwards. So we will come back to this, just having a look at some of your questions. And I'm also going to turn on my camera so you can see me. I just might move this to the left side so you can see it better. All right, so you should be able to see me and also the illustration in the background that we are going to come back to. So having a look at your questions, if you have any questions, you can ask now. All right. That's the shape. Yeah, I replied to that. What strategies do you take to learn and consistently use new shortcut keys? Well, shortcuts are really just something that you shouldn't force yourself using it. So only use a shortcut if you actually find it useful. So although I know probably hundreds of shortcuts, I don't always use all of them, and I tend to alternate as well. I mean, sometimes I do things with a shortcut, then I realize that there's even a faster way than a shortcut. So I don't stick to using them, and I'm not trying to force myself to memorize them. It's more like a natural build-up. So you learn shortcuts. Let's say I showed you a few shortcuts today. You try them out, and then you implement them into your workflow. If they actually turn out to be useful, then keep using it. And don't force yourself trying to use shortcuts all the time. Of course, they can save you a lot of time, but it's not something you need to force yourself. It should be like a natural build-up. I can see more questions are coming in, and there's just one thing I also wanted to mention, and I'm probably going to mention this a few times in these live sessions, that when you learn something, let's say you learned something today from me, my experience is that I can really master something if I practice at least 3 times as much I've spent learning a new technique. So let's say I showed you a technique in 5 minutes, at least spend 15 minutes practicing that. It's even healthier if the proportions are 1 to 5. So if you see something, let's say you see a tutorial that was 1 minute, you should spend 5 minutes practicing it. Or for a 10-minute video, you should spend 50 minutes practicing. Without that amount of time, and ideally straight after you've seen it, or straight after you read something, or seen something on YouTube, you should spend that much amount of time. As long as you do that, the things that you've learned are really going to be implemented, and it will become natural after that. It will be part of your skill set. All right, so let me have a look at the questions. I hope that made sense. So 1 to 5, healthy ratio. 1 to 3, still good. 1 to 0, worst. So make sure you don't just watch videos or live streams and then just simply, okay, that's cool. Make sure you practice and try it out. Hello from Russia, welcome. Thanks a lot for joining. So, cool. Let me go back. Super Sadek said, I saw something using, I think, the reflection tool. Reflected around anchor point. Do you know the shortcut is used to move the reflection anchor? All right, I can show this to you quickly. So let me just create an artboard here and show this very quickly. I will try to do it above my head so you can see it. So when you do reflection, this is, by the way, is probably not from this stream, it's from one of my videos. If you have something like a shape, circles are always a good one to start with. So if I put down a guide using the rulers, Command R is to get the rulers, then place the guide down, and then if you want to move your shape, you press O, the shortcut for the reflect tool. Then you click onto the guide on which you want to reflect this shape to. So that's the center of symmetry now. I can now drag this shape around, and holding down the Alt key will make sure it's duplicated, and holding down the Shift key makes sure that it is kept symmetrical or kept on the same horizontal plane. Or direction. So Alt and Shift are the 2 shortcuts that I used, and that way you duplicate and keep on the right side, on the exact right side of your drawing. Cool. I hope that made sense, and hope that's what you asked. Russell is asking, what is expand? Well, if you watch the recorded version of this, I explain it, I think, quite well. But expand essentially is a way of simplifying your shapes in Illustrator. So if you have a complex appearance, it can simplify it. All right. I can see some of you, F is asking about 3-point perspective. It's a really good question or good request. I will make a note of that, and I won't do it in this session, but I'm going to talk about that maybe in the next one. I can maybe do a whole session about drawing in perspective, not just in Illustrator, but in general, understanding how perspective works. That's actually a good one. Let me just make a note of that. By the way, if you have any good things like that, let me know and I can come back to it. All right, so cool, thanks for that. And unfortunately, I can't do the webcam smaller at the moment, but I'm going to switch back. You don't have to see me all the time. Just while I'm answering your questions, I will have it on. In the future, I will set it up better, and then it will be smaller. Cool. All right. I think I replied to most of the recent questions. All right, there's one more question. How to make quick shadows. Yep, that's also something. What I'm using to stream, I'm using Telestream's, what's the name of this? Wirecast. Wirecast is quite a cool application. I'm currently not using the Pro version, but I'm planning of upgrading. So if you guys like me doing streams, then you can try that out. I mean, sorry, I can upgrade to that in the future. So I'm using a lot of different things for drawing. You can see here in the background, I have the big Cintiq 27. This is an amazing tool as well. I only use that, and it's connected to my computer. I only use that when I really need to do like photo retouching or illustration. So that is obviously the professional tool that I use. But then I also have the Wacom Intuos 4. It's a quite old one, but this is still something I use on a regular basis. And it's here next to me. If I feel like I switch to it, but I also use a mouse, so I'm not like ignoring mouse whenever I work. It really depends on the preference. So I would say probably 20% mouse, 80% tablets that I work with. And yeah, I tried the iPad Pro. I have an iPad Pro as well, and Pencil, Apple Pencil, drawing with that. I'm planning to doing streams on that as well, and different tools and different applications, not just Illustrator. So these are all some things that I might come back in other streams. Welcome everyone, whoever is joining right now. And yeah, thanks for replying to each other, zooming in and out. Yeah, Command or Control plus and minus. And let me see. What is the difference between object expand and object shape expand? It's actually the same thing. So it gives you the same change. So if I go to object shape expand shape, no, actually, sorry, this is something different. I might come back to this. This is a little bit more complicated to explain how this works, especially because I don't have the example ready, but that's a good question as well. I might come back to that a little bit later. All right, so let me come back to drawing, and I'm going to switch back to just showing my screen again. I think you've seen enough of me for one live stream. So coming back to this example, I am going to use the, let me just switch back here as well so I can see your chat. Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, cool. So the example that I wanted to show you here, I'm not going to walk you through this because we are already running a little bit out of time. So the session I planned to be 1 hour, and it's already been going on for almost 50 minutes. So I will just do another 10 minutes of this, and I might do the full one in another stream in the future. So what I wanted to show you is the essential technique. Whenever you need to recreate a drawing that you've done either on paper or you did like a sketch digitally, is that how you approach adding all the elements. So this workflow is mainly for Illustrator, but whatever vector application or even Photoshop you use, you should think about always drawing on top of each other, drawing shapes or elements on top of each other. So the difference drawing in digital format to drawing on paper is that you have layers, or you have you can arrange your objects on top of each other. And what I mean there is that even simple things like the head in this case, I would draw things quite differently than I would draw these on paper. So for example, if I want to draw the head, I could use many different techniques to draw that. I could use the pen tool and start drawing around and following the shape and align my drawing on top of that. So that's obviously one technique you probably are familiar with. And I'm just going to quickly finish it, and obviously this can be done with less anchor points as well. By the way, if you are interested to learn how to use the pen tool, I might do like one live session of that as well in the future, specifically on the pen tool. But you can learn quite a lot about the pen tool if you check out my videos, like learn to draw anything in Illustrator. That has quite a lot of useful tips already on that. But let's say we have our shape like that, and then I use the ellipse tool to draw another shape on top of it, like here. Now, you know that already, that we can hide or subtract elements like this one. We could select the two together and then use the shape builder tool, alt click and drag, and I could quickly remove that line from above. So that's already a useful technique. But what if I then want to move the shape around? Well, obviously it's going to be a separate shape thanks to the shape builder, but the way I can change this around will be a little bit difficult. So it's not aligned anymore, and it's slightly difficult to make adjustments to it without messing up the outer line. So what you can also do is another really cool technique called draw inside. So if I want to make sure that line appears only within this current shape that I drew, there is this mode here on the toolbar called draw inside. Shift D is the shortcut. When you switch to that, you can use any tools, including the pen tool or the shape tools, and you can start drawing inside your current selected shape. So if I use the ellipse tool, for example, and draw, you will notice that I don't even need to use the shape builder. It automatically keeps it only visible within the previous selection or the selected shape that I started using. So now if I double click on this, I can move that shape around. Double click, by the way, is the isolation mode. I can move this shape around and I can refine it. I can change its size. And when I double click outside, it's still going to be within the previous shape. Cool. I can see there's a lot of questions and there's conversation between you guys. Sorry if I don't reply straight away, and I guess you can also reply to each other, but I'm trying to focus on explaining the draw inside technique. So let's see what happens if I change the main shape to a fill color. So if I add the fill color on that, that's how it looks, and I can remove the stroke color from it. Now if I double click on inside this and I try to select that shape that we created, I can also add that different color on that, maybe this one. So you can see that we can actually have fill colors and it works the same way. So essentially draw inside creates a clipping group in Illustrator. So clipping group is visible here in the layers panel. There's my clip group, within which the clipping shape is the original one, the head, and then within that we have the top of the head, which we can easily move around. I use the shift up and down, right and left arrows to move shapes around quickly. That's the shortcut I'm using. And you can see as long as you select a shape from within a clip group by clicking on the little circle next to it, then you can move it around even without double clicking and entering the isolation mode. Also make sure you don't just click on the names of a shape or element in Illustrator. If you want to actually select it, make sure you click on the circle next to it. Okay, that's the way you select something. So that is now created, and we saw the example of the draw inside method. So if I want, I can press Shift X on these shapes just so we can get back to the original colors. Seeing just the outlines. So I select that other shape as well. Shift X is the way to swap, and then we can see the original tracing behind. Cool. Just checking your comments. All right. So if I now want to continue drawing this, I would draw probably, let's say, the neck. Now here's another technique that you can use. If you have a longer shape like the neck, you can actually draw again the inside of that. And when I have the pen tool, I can use the space bar to move anchors around while I'm drawing. So if I draw a path section like that, I can then have it selected and increase the stroke size like this. And I can also decide how I want the stroke endpoints to look like. So I can have them rounded In this case, that's probably a better solution. And I can maybe move this point at the bottom up a bit. I'm using the arrow keys again to align it. So instead of drawing around that shape and drawing the outline, I just drew the inside of it. Because once I have a fill color on the head, I can just have this one behind all the other shapes. So I'm just going to choose a very different color so we can see it. And I send it to the background. Control Shift or Command Shift square brackets. You can send front or backward, all the way to the back, a shape that you have currently selected. And then if I have a color on this shape, again, Shift Exit, you can see that's how it's going to look. So you don't actually need to make it that shape really accurate, the ending of it. Just make it go underneath the other shape, and that way you can make sure that there won't be any gaps between them. And the same thing applies to everything else I would do in Illustrator. So just once again, the same method here, quickly showing it to you on the arm. I can draw with the pen tool using the space bar. I can move it around. So there's my arm. And in this case, I'm still going to use the stroke attribute, but I use also another really cool tool called the width tool. This is the width tool. Shift W is the shortcut for it, with which what you can do is to resize certain parts of your stroke. So you can make your stroke thinner at certain parts, like that, and some parts thicker. So I can increase this part or make it smaller, and I can add as many points as I want. So you can create a more dynamic stroke than just a simple flat 1 point size at each point. Cool. Now, if I then use the circle, I can draw on top of this, and if I wanted to make sure that these shapes are above my previous object, then it's just simply a matter of organizing them. So if I have this on top or I have it behind. Okay, so you don't have to be accurate with the endpoints of your shapes. You just simply have to decide what's in front and what's behind. So always keep that in mind whenever you draw things in Illustrator. All right, so as I said, I don't want to go further into this example. This is something we will probably do in another session. We covered quite a lot in this session already, so you will be able to watch the recorded version of this, and you will be able to see what I've done. And in next time when I do a live session, I'm going to show you maybe the full process of doing this character, or I might show you something different. But this was more like a test, this whole first attempt at doing live streaming. So I hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions before we finish, and I have another few minutes left, so if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will try to reply in the comments. And also, I just wanted to mention that if you like what you've seen today, and if you want to see more from me, I would really appreciate if you help out either on Patreon. You see the link under the video to my Patreon site, and you can decide how much you have or how much you can spare to support my channel and support me doing more of these live sessions, and also just simply uploading and publishing generally more videos on YouTube. Or if you want to learn from my recorded and more structured courses, you can also find a link to my courses where you can subscribe for $19 a month at the moment, and you can access all my courses. And those courses are very thorough. I mean, I go through everything and it's really structured. More than a live session like this. But of course, a live stream is something where you can interact with me. So let me just have a look at the questions that you asked, and I will try to reply and might even show you some of the techniques that you asked about if we have time for it. So how you choose color and color combination for object. Yeah, that's all about color harmony. That's another big topic I'm planning to do in another stream. So make sure you subscribe to my channel, and then you should get notified when I start a live stream. Color in general is a big topic, but choosing colors in Illustrator, I usually do with the Recolor Artwork. So I start off using just random colors, and then I refine my colors with the Recolor Artwork, and I'm going to show you that in another stream for sure. All right, let me see. Frenchie is asking, would you say it is essential to go to design college to become a graphic designer in the future? No, I don't think so, although this really depends in which country you live and what type of college are we talking about. But I think becoming a graphic designer, and a lot of things these days, but I can only talk about the profession that I have. Becoming a graphic designer is really comes down to the passion and the motivation. So how motivated you are and how disciplined you are to learn on your own, because you can learn so much things online. I mean, even this thing what we are doing now, when I started learning about Adobe products, there wasn't any live streams or even good tutorials at all on YouTube. You couldn't find anything. I was learning from books, and I was learning from the very first like video trainings from Total Training and Linda. Back then they didn't even have online subscription models, they just had the DVDs, so I had to buy the DVDs and learning from them. And I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of resources we have, and I'm talking about myself as well. I'm finding so many useful content daily on YouTube and on other sources as well. It's just incredible. And I think college is great for those who are less disciplined and less able to force themselves to stick to a routine and learn and process what they learn. Because watching a video doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to learn anything from it. Learning is about processing what you've seen and applying it. So if you have a good self-discipline, and if you are motivated and passionate about what you want to learn, then I think you can learn anything completely at home on your own. And I'm not saying you should do that, because it's also not healthy. It's good to interact and talk to people, show them what you've done. But if you feel like it's easier for you to do everything from home, and then I think like it's definitely something that you can learn to a certain extent. And then of course, if you want to be really good at something, I think it comes to the point where you start interacting with other professionals, either online or in like an agency that you start working in, or to actually start working on real projects. It will also teach you a lot. But yeah, to come back to the question, I don't think a college or even a university is necessary. I mean, either university or college, it's not really necessary. I know a lot of designers, professionals who didn't have any training and still became amazing, and they learned these products really well, and then they learned about the theories that you would normally learn in college or university. So it's really up to you how motivated you are. Okay, so cool. Yeah, college is good for networking, definitely, and university is the same, or short courses is the same. Okay, cool. Someone joined from Budapest. That's where I'm from originally as well, from Hungary. So that's great. Faris is saying a self-taught illustrator doing character design for a living now. Brilliant. That's really cool. If you want, you can share your link to your portfolio if you have one. Feel free to share it here in the chat. I don't mind. All right, so I think if there's anything really urgent you wanted to ask, you can, but I think today's session was all that I mentioned so far, and I hope you found it useful. And I'm going to try to improve everything, like the topics and the way I structure these live streams in the future. So I'm happy to, like, any feedback you give me, I appreciate it, and I'm happy to do streams on different topics. So if you have any suggestions, let me know either in here in the comments, or also you can get in touch with me through my website. I have my email there. And once again, you can check out Patreon as well. If you become a patron of mine, I'm going to do polls, so questioning my patrons about what they would like to see content on. So if you prefer to direct me in a way, then Patreon is the place to do that. Cool. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining once again. And if you missed the stream, the recorded version will be available. And hopefully I will start the next stream soon. I will try to do it as often as possible. And you're awesome. Thanks a lot for joining again. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.